Hey gang, Shane Patrick White here, and welcome to Beyond the Process. I was recently commissioned to draw one of my favorite gunslingers, Jonah Hex. He's a DC Comics character who's probably one of the longest running Western characters in comics today. But here's the thing, I wanted to try something of a little bit of a twist. I was wondering what it would be like if MOEBIUS, a French comic artist who is very famous for his character Blueberry, what would it look like if he had drawn Jonah Hex? So I did some research. I go through the thumbnails, I go through the blue line pencil roughs, the final pencils, and the final inks to get as close as I can to figure out how MOEBIUS would have drawn Jonah Hex. So if you want to see how it turned out, sit back, relax, and enjoy the process. I've always liked Moebius's line work and thought with some solid reference nearby, what would it take to illustrate a Jonah Hex commission in his style? A little hubris, some patience, and a whole lot of luck. I took a crack at knocking out a thumbnail drawing and then took another pass at it a bit larger so I could be sure I knew where I was going with it. Still, I needed to get this down on Strathmore 2-ply 500 series Bristol paper using my trusty color erase blue pencil. Whether you're drawing a cowboy hat or just about any hat with a brim, make sure the crown fits over the head nice and snug, accounting a little for hair if the character is well coiffed. Too often, people don't fit the hat to a person's head, and when they add the brim, it only gets worse. The secret to adding a brim is really to think of it like a taco shell, a relaxed ellipsoid that sets just above the ears and is about 1.5 inches above the eyebrows. Of course, this takes practice, but luckily there's a lot of reference online. Like with all commissions, I like to create a border around the bust shape for the character to break out of. It gives me an opportunity to add environment or something relatable to the character in the background. Moving on to the final pencil phase, I break out my big fat Tri-Rex pencil. I love these things because they fit so well into my gorilla hands. Constructing his features on a strong skull, I wanted to play off the ugly side with a rugged handsomeness. Many artists have used Clint Eastwood from Sergio Leone films, but I'm not interested in that as much. As you can see, I changed up the angle of the head, again from the rough, and going back to what I'd originally drawn in the thumbnail. I liked it and didn't want to meander, lest I end up in not liking the final outcome. The main attribute of Jonah Hex, and the elephant in the room, is the fact that the right side of his face is messed up. I'm not sure I know why or how that came to be, but it's a distinction the character has always had. I've been drawing a lot lately, and my usual hand position isn't ideal. When that happens, I use several other hand positions that I like to change up. They offer a nice break as well as some very interesting control options. I'll do a more in-depth video later on these choices. But one note I'll add is when your pencil is near parallel with the board, you can get some really nice feathering options that go from thick to thin a lot easier than trying to draw feathering with just single lines. I've used this technique for years, and I'm comfortable switching things up when needed for different handling and effects. The options offer different types of wrist arcs for different levels of control. As I've demonstrated in the past, rotating from the elbow gives you a wider arc control, especially with inking. It's the same with penciling as well. I'm being mindful of the feathering scale, looking at my iPad for the reference to keep things evenly balanced. Whatever you do, try and find something that works well and stick with it throughout. One of the great things about Moebius' style is the small tick marks that he uses in organic shapes like smoke. I wanted to honor that as much as possible and see if I could get the right amount of rhythm and flow. When drawing facial hair on characters, it's also an opportunity to find the right rhythm and scale of lines. I tend to use straight or slightly curved lines. Others use curlicues. Feathering in Moebius' case tends to really model the form. Even with the shadow of the brim, I want the contour to feel like it's laying over Jonah Hex's face. Moebius, in many instances where he's capturing the powerful sun and bouncing light of the American Southwest, will keep his shadows open with feathering and not use spotted blacks. To make sure my ink sticks on the paper, I remove the excess graphite by rolling a fresh, kneaded eraser over it. Using Speedball Super Black ink and my trusty Winsor & Newton Series 7 No. 3 brush, I get to work on the final lap of this commission. You'll notice the exception to my rule where I usually start by filling in big areas of black to get my brush handling down. Instead, I go right for the eye. I think what I wanted to figure out first and foremost was the brim shadow work on the face. Knowing how to adjust the thickness of the stroke so the thickest part is near the edge of the shadow and light will give a strong sense of contrast and still account for bounce lighting that might come up off the ground. Because this is a more open line approach, color will do some of the heavy lifting, the finishing part of the art. Opportunities like this, where each stage isn't the finish but instead feeds the next, not only keeps it exciting for one's own process, but it creates a liveliness to the final art. It's much easier if you're doing it all yourself, or working with a team who knows where things should be going. Another approach to keeping things energetic is to simply ink faster. It keeps you from overthinking and relies more on your instinct of supporting the pencils. The hand and brush control may dip initially, but at some point you will find it averaging out and the look becoming more pleasing. This requires a lot of trust in yourself to grow. Most areas of growth, when learning a new thing or executing in a different way, will have a feeling of stepping backwards. But this doesn't mean it's forever. It's only a period of adjustment until you get it into your bones. You can also see the scaling of feathering on the shoulders is thicker in most parts of the face. This not only gives weight to different areas to reinforce the finer work, but it also makes it feel a little rougher, much like the character himself. As you can see, I go back and enhance some strokes, like in the brim shadow, to push the contrast. The hat is another example where the black shadow around the crossed cutlasses adds weight, framing the figure's features between the hat and the neck shadow. Study is important for an artist's growth. Emulation is generally how many creators start out. As they increase their life experience and receive more inputs, their style will hopefully change and morph into something all their own. I've traveled, worked in different mediums, met people with differing views, immersed myself in a wide variety of film, theater, and art, which has shaped me. All of it, along with my own personal values, has added to my approach to life and art. It is the best informer, and possibly the only way to cultivate a truly unique vision. One of my favorite things about Moebius is his environment work. The strong shapes and small ink marks all add up to create rhythmic distance in which he gets a lot of mileage. In this case, I simplified the little background elements like the mountains and the buzzards to give the piece more weight. I wanted Jonah to be the focus and didn't want it to become too tedious. The only tedious thing I wanted was to make sure I had all the character's attributes accurate. So, there you have it, my version of what it might have been like if Moebius had illustrated Jonah Hex. I hope you liked it, and more importantly, I hope you learned something along the way. Good luck, and have fun. Thanks again for joining me today. If you found any value in this, hit the like button. Better yet, subscribe, or tell a friend. Until next time, thanks for watching.